presentation. I'm Jo Ireland, I'm the Head of Strategy and Community at Council here, and I'm also part of a team that's working on the TA Hub. And as many of you will have seen in the article in the TA Courier recently, that we did a retail economic study for Te Awamutu, and we commissioned it as part of the redevelopment of that hub, and we wanted to look at whether anything we did there was either going to complement or compete with anything that was happening in the retail sector already. And we really wanted to understand what development should be provided in that area and how really it could complement what we already have. So today we've brought Tim Heath, the report writer himself, back to this is the second session we've held. We got a lot of really interesting responses from the first one, so I thought it would be a good idea to bring Tim back again. So Tim is from property economics, and he's an expert in strategic property research, and has led over 1,500 projects for large corporate clients and government institutions over the past 20 years. So welcome, Tim, and also welcome to our local MP, Barbara Kruger. It's great to have you here. Tim's an interesting speaker, and again, I hope you enjoy the next wee while, and I'm sure he'll be open to questions.
Thanks for the introduction, and thanks for the opportunity to come and speak. It's good to see people here, because one, it shows you care about your town centre and your area, and it is an area that is facing a few challenges, as I hope the data will show. What I would say, and for those who've seen it before, I'll try not to repeat too much, you probably know some of the song and dance show, but what I would say is just try and leave your preconceived ideas about Te Awamutu at the door. Come with an open mind. I don't know who owns what, I don't know who is vested in what, I don't know the personalities or the individual interests. So I'm looking from a completely fog-free lens over Te Awamutu. I have no understanding of who the commercial interests or what the commercial interests are. So it's a complete independent view and painting a picture of my understanding and interpretation of the data and some of the challenges facing Te Awamutu. And I suppose one of the first things we need to understand is that Te Awamutu is part of a wider commercial market. It does not operate in isolation. It hasn't got the Great Wall of China wrapped around it. Flow, goods, economic markets, spend, etc. crosses the boundaries from your Te Awamutu. You draw money in and you lose money out, and we'll talk about some of that in a minute. But fundamental is one of the key challenges for Te Awamutu is to understand how to make this area more competitive in an environment, with the wider environment, which is becoming increasingly competitive. Being the same, and as you are at the moment, isn't going to be good enough in 1 year, 5 years, 10 years' time to maintain your current position. So we need to think of, with a burgeoning economy, it's growing, with a burgeoning tourist hub, it's growing as a destination. So how do we capture more of that spend that's available in the wider market? So how do we make Te Awamutu more relevant, its local economy more relevant in the wider context of not only the Waikato economy, the New Zealand economy? Because the opportunity is there and it's going to be there. So it's whether, if you don't pick it up in another economy, Cambridge's, the Hamiltons, Taurons, etc. will do. So it's how do we position Te Awamutu moving forward to give it a better chance of grabbing more spend, which equals more jobs, which equals bigger economic boost, etc., etc. And we'll talk about some of the long things. So, as was alluded to earlier, our main focus has been about the Te Awamutu town centre and its economy in the context of how that sits in with the Economic Hub project, and to make sure that whatever is developed at the Economic Hub, or in and around the Economic Hub, doesn't undermine what Main Street's trying to do in the business community of Te Awamutu. It's got to add to rather than take away from the Main Street. So what we looked at is the core economic market for Te Awamutu. This is the area, geospatial extent, of which Te Awamutu has a strategic location advantage in terms of its closest proximity for accessibility to the goods and services on offer in Te Awamutu. That doesn't represent your entire market. It represents the market where you would expect and anticipate Te Awamutu would draw the majority of its retail sales and commercial sales locally. And you should be getting a high market share or market penetration in that area because you're the closest. If you're not receiving a high penetration in that catchment, the question is where you're receiving it from. And if you're going to rely on these areas further afield to maintain the Te Awamutu market, you've got some real challenges ahead beyond what we're going to talk about here, because there are other areas and more competitive locations that would draw from this, draw from this area. So this is the critical market for Te Awamutu to focus on moving forward, to see what it can yield out of that market from a spend and employment area. So keep in context that area when we're talking about some of these numbers. So when we look at the population growth projected for that period, it's quite a long period, 2043, so we're talking about a long-term planning horizon. We're talking about 5,000 additional people and just over 2,500 additional households over that period. That is not exactly startling growth, it's not exactly negative growth. You'll be surprised that that's a positive story, because I have given presentations where it's either flatlining or declining in a lot of the provincial areas around New Zealand. So at least you are growing. So these are the projections, excuse me, these are the projections based on the latest data from Stats New Zealand, which is based on the census 2013. So they've been updated for that, the new census base. But it doesn't take into effect some of those wider influences that can occur over the time, such as Auckland not building enough homes for its people, so you have a halo effect and that's spilling over down to these other areas. So there is potential upside to that, but what I wouldn't say, it's just a projection. You are not going to get that by right. That's in the market and you're up for grabs. To get that, you need to create more jobs, because there's almost a direct relationship between job growth and population growth. So if you create more jobs in your local economy, you could achieve a growth projection higher than that. If you don't, you could flatline, and if you start losing jobs as an economy, you could start seeing some negative population growth. So that's a net position, but at this stage, based on how the economy's been trending over the last wee while, and your location in the wider sphere of the economy, you've got positive growth, but it's not huge. And what it shows is the bulk of the future market, whether it be 2033 or 2043, is already here in Te Awamutu. Your population base is largely already established when we look forward. 5,000 people in the wider scheme of things is not a huge level of growth, but it is important. It does help and it does add to your local economy, but the wheels need to be spinning better now rather than relying on growth to build your economy. I think that's one of the key messages that comes out. So what we did as part of the, and if you have any questions, feel free to answer them as you go through. So what we did as part of the study was we did an audit of the retail provision of in Te Awamutu, and we broke it up by some of the key ANZIC sectors. Now ANZIC is an Australian New Zealand Standard Industrial Classification, all the different retail and employment sectors that we have throughout an economy. So we looked at the retail side of it and broke it up into the key ANZIC retail sectors. So it paints a fairly detailed picture of the current provision that Te Awamutu offers the community and visitors, and we broke it up in terms of proportion of nominal stores and proportion of GFA, which is gross floor area, so it's the store footprint of a particular store. So when you have large stores, i.e. a supermarket, you have few, nominally, there's only 3 stores, but they have created a large proportion of GFA because they take up a large store footprint. So we have, they make up 2% of your, 2% of your nominal stores, but they make a quarter of your actual GFA offer. Supermarkets are critical stores for any economy. They're fundamental to provide those staple food and grocery items. A high proportion of the household spend goes towards the supermarket sector. And what I would say is that you do have a good provision of supermarkets. But the introduction of the Pack and Save into the Te Awamutu offer has been a positive thing, and I'll talk about that in a little bit more, because there is some brand shopping that goes on. But you have a fairly strong supermarket offer, nothing required in the foreseeable future at this stage. Just build on what you've got, make that better. Department stores, you've got your warehouse, you've pretty much got that covered. In terms of some of the concerning ones, I suppose you could say, is when we have other goods retailing. Other goods retailing is stores that are unbranded and are not easily classified. They don't trade that well. So the productivity of dollars per square metre is normally lower than what you get in a lot of other sectors. So other good retailing, the spend proportion is about half. So you've got 19% of your stores that fall into that category, which are what we would term low productivity, low performing stores, or lower. But it's only 10% of the market. So you've got double the size of the provision in that sector versus the spend available. And that drops down to GFA because they are smaller to 14%. So that's a bit of a concern in terms of something you just need to watch. You don't want to see it grow. You'd want to see some trend the other way, to start seeing that as a reducing proportion of Te Awamutu's wider retail offer. Because the proliferation of those stores leads to people shopping elsewhere, because they like brands and preference. Vacant, you're not doing too bad. In a normal, I suppose what you'd call a healthy state, you'd have a vacant provision of around that. So that's not a concern, but the concern is the quality of what you've got. Okay, so, and we'll talk about that in terms of the spend. So you haven't got a quantity issue, you've got a quality issue. You've got all the retail GFA that you need, that your market can support. It's just whether is that filled with the right stores and in the right manner, with the right quality of environment created for the market for them to shop there. And that's where the question is. So you don't need you don't need to go rezoning more land and developing more stores. You just need to make this existing provision better. Okay? That's a really important message. So you don't need to go and duplicate another Main Street somewhere else and provide another retail provision elsewhere. You've got all the provision you need, you just need to look after it and make it and help encourage that to perform better in the market. The balance of it is not too bad. The clothing and footwear is a fundamental provision for town centres and higher order shopping. They're less frequent, they're not a convenience good, they're a comparison good, and by that we mean people will go to different shops and compare the price of jeans or the price of shoes to see who's got the best offer, and then they'll make the purchase there. They don't just go in. For a convenience good, you often go in, you know the price of can to baked beans, you buy them, and where you go to the closest one. So that provision is a little bit underwhelming in terms of the proportion of the GFA, it's about 6%. That actually comprises of roughly about 10% of retail expenditure available. So you're a bit undercooked in your clothing, or in that sector, your clothing, footwear and personal accessories, versus the market potential that you generate. So I'd anticipate to see, again, an improvement over time in that if some more provision was made available. Overall, you've got roughly 150 shops and just under 50,000 square metres of retail GFA. So again, in terms of the amount of GFA your market can support, you're roughly bang on. It's the quality of that provision which is the critical thing to, to work on. Oh, very keen. So this is just a graphical representation of that table. I'm a visual guy, so it helps me understand it a bit better. So again, if you look at the top, the blue, low nominal proportion of supermarkets, high proportion of GFA. But when you start looking down at your food and beverage, the other goods, and your bacon, those three sectors alone are roughly 35% of your retail provision. And again, your food and beverages, your takeaways and stores like that, restaurants get those takeaways. And just having a look around the town, again, it's not the fact that you haven't got that provision, you've got it. It's just that your provision you've got is very underwhelming in terms of the offering environment that it's created. It's no reflection on the quality, for example, of the fast food, the quality of the food. It's just unappealing to visit and go and view. So I think it's an upscaling of the improvement of the offer, and that in terms of physical offer, the built form, as well as the wider environment. If that much of your town centre provision is going to be within that sector. That is an important sector. Obviously, it's becoming more important as a lot of the takeaway stores compete, prices are getting cheaper, etc., etc. But again, nothing too disparate there. Your vacant level is good. It comes back to, again, quality versus quantity. So let's have a look at the size of the market. So the line on the top represents the level of annual retail expenditure in millions of dollars generated by that geographic area, that earlier map that I showed you. So it's roughly around 220, that market, that area generates roughly $220 million a year in retail expenditure. based on growth in the market at 243, that's going to jump to nearly 335 million a year, and that's in 2015 dollars. So it's a significant market in terms of it can support a good quality centre. What we have seen over in recent years is the term town centre. We've seen a degradation of it. Traditionally, and if you look back 40 or so years, things are a lot more isolated. So the provincial centres, such as Te Awamutu and many of the others, were more isolated. The further distance you had to go, the roads weren't as good, the cars didn't travel as fast, etc., etc. So you internalised a lot more of the spend. And also that's reflected in the retail distribution. So things like the warehouse and the large format offer has come in now, so you get large format centres. That's centralised. So instead of having 3 stores to service 3 individual provincial areas, they have one central big banging store to service the same market, because people are able to access that bigger store better. It's efficient for them, they lower their overhead costs and wage costs and operating expenses, but while still servicing the same market. So we've seen the degradation of some of those town centres, and New Plymouth is another one I've done recently, but Te Awamutu is no different in that some of those key stores are no longer here that traditionally could have been here or should have been here. So you start seeing the demise of the small hardware stores. They've just been absorbed into the big hardware stores. Better provision, but you don't see as many small hardware stores around the shops now. And that's the same for, excuse me, a lot of the supermarkets now. They're called category killers, where they operate in the food and beverage sector. They come in and they dominate that sector. They represent roughly 75 to 80% of all food and beverage spend. They try and capture, depending on the offer, which has an effect on the number of small local fruit and veg shops and bakeries and butchers and things like that used to be dispersed around the town centre. So the traditional role and function of the centres is changing over time, and it's morphing. And it comes back to the key issue. If you are a centre that is stagnant, then you're not keeping up and you're falling behind in a relative and a comparative sense. You need to, as a centre, you need to be undergoing constant change, evolution, to refresh your offer, refresh your provision, refresh the reasons why your local community should shop in your centre rather than any other centre in the market. Again, a competitive market. You have no right to attract sales because they are your local community. You don't have a right to that spend. You have a right to be part of the wider market. So just as easily as you can lose spend to another centre, you can also attract spend into Te Awamutu from another area. So you would compete directly, obviously, with Cambridge and Hamilton primarily, and to a lesser degree Auckland. So that's the competitive nature of the market, and that's the 218 or 220 million rounded per annum is that area. But if you broaden that out, that goes well beyond. If you include Hamilton, it goes well beyond into the billions of dollars. Okay? So you are not going to compete with Hamilton's offer. They are a larger centre. They've got all the brands up there. But it's about competing smarter rather than just trying to duplicate what they've got. You need to better understand the reasons why people are shopping here and why they're shopping in Hamilton and what you can do to address that. So if you look at the current provision, you've got 45,000 square metres sustainable, and that grows over time to 2043 to nearly 70,000 square metres. Again, that's slow incremental growth. Development normally occurs in chunks, so you see a new development happening so once every 5 years or something that would consume that, but that's fine. But again, important thing is, a positive is your market is growing. Tick. For any retailer wanting to come here, or any retailer who's already located here, looking at what's going to happen in the future, again, based on projected growth. Don't just assume it.
So are you talking about foot traffic spend, or are you talking about all aspects of spend, like buying the internet?
No, we'll get on to that. It's about the spend generated by all the people that not peak the foot traffic. This is because then you only capture that if people actually walk in outside your centre or outside your store. That's what's available, generated by that market. Where it's spent, I'll get on to in a minute. And with that, I have internet spending, now you raised it. Internet retail shopping is obviously the largest growth medium in the sector at the moment. It's currently about 5. New Zealand's total retail market is about $55 billion. And about 5% to 6% at the moment is on internet retailing, both domestic and international. Most experts predict that's going to go to about 10 to 15% in the fairly, in maybe the next 10 years. And again, that's another competitor to the physical stores. But it's not going to overtake the physical stores. So you're not going to lose town centres and they're all online. But it's going to be a medium which people are using more and more. I'm one. I frequently use supermarket internet shopping, and internet shopping is cheaper. Simple as that, and more convenient. And I'll be on to that in a minute about when people shop and they don't shop. But critical to understand those changes in the market, because you're not competing with the shop next door or the shop within your centre. You're competing with a shop on a worldwide basis.
But if you're internet shopping, the chances of your product coming from China is greater. So while you're getting a cheaper product, you've actually taken work away from New Zealand.
Do you think I care about that?
Well, I think you should in the long term, really, because if you talk about, wanting to increase employment opportunities,
yeah.
We can only do that if we support our own country.
Yes. Only a very small percentage of total retail sales are based on morality.
Well, I understand
the reality of the situation, it's a fair question, and it's a hand in the harness, and that's the right thing to do. But at the end of the day, if I can pick up a pair of jeans for $60, that's costing me $130 in the shop down the road, 9 times out of 10, I'm going to go for the $60. I've got kids, money's tight, I've got to be careful, and so it becomes often a dollars and cents equation rather than a morality equation. So the challenge for the retailers is to work out what can we do, one, to be as competitive as we can, but to convert those, I suppose, dollars and cents shoppers into wanting to shop at my local centre, my local store, what have you. And that's the challenge not only for, obviously, Te Awamutu, but for every retailer around the country. So in a market that is growing year on year on year, okay, so it's a very fair point, but do shoppers at the point of purchasing make those decisions? I don't think it's high up in the equation of a lot of people buying. And it could be buying a duvet, it could be buying some towels, it could be whatever it is. People are not just saying jeans, 130-60, they're going, oh, jeans, and I can get the new duvet cover, and I can pay for the school camp. So there's more decisions being made rather than a direct price comparison. What does the balance of $70 mean in terms of the spend?
You're probably getting an inferior quality product. I know people who don't think like that, but you know about all the people who are working in sweatshops somewhere.
Yep. Bangladesh, India.
Yeah.
Yep. So that's correct. You're right, but are you saying the world market is completely wrong? You could say the world market could be completely immoral.
It is completely immoral.
Yeah. The biggest, Nigeria is a good example, where if you think Nigeria, your perception is not, wives getting beaten, babies being thrown in on the road, no work. It is one of the biggest textile industries, and the most successful industry in the world comes from Nigeria. It's had a very proud history of it, and same with India. The Philippines is very big in that now. So it's not because they're a third world country that they're providing that. It's because they're actually damn good at it, and it can do it more competitively priced. Yes, they do have low wages, and Bangladesh is an example of that. But it's not just that alone. That has been their economic pillar for about 50 years. So there's a lot more behind the scenes than just a price, sweatshop labour thing. But at the end of the day, us as consumers in New Zealand, we have very little influence over that, and that's just the reality. Yes, it's totally immoral that slave labour is out here in Bangladesh in the sweatshops, but we are not making a decision that will be able to change that. We're such a pimp on the side of the rhino's bum in terms of market and influence that we have. We're followers, we're not leaders in the retail consumption game. We can change the way we do it here. And I think there is a move towards more, there is a move towards more reality though, with you can start seeing organic coffee shops and things like that.
Slow fashion.
Yeah, and that will pick up, definitely. But again, it's not going to take over. It'll be a small part of a bigger market. So, yeah. Right. So this looks at, on an annualised basis, to get rid of any seasonal variation, of where people within that catchment we identified, the early map, where they spend their money, where they spend their retail dollars. So 54% of retail of the spend generated by that catchment, $220 is spent in Te Awamutu. Conversely, 46% is not spent in Te Awamutu. Where does the rest of it go? Balance 7% goes to balance the one part district, and I suggest that would largely be Cambridge. And 23%, nearly a quarter of it, goes to Hamilton City. So you'll expect there's employment flows, people prefer to go to a big mall or what have you. You'd expect that percentage to be probably about that, given the offer locally. But the challenge is, given over $100 million of your market's generated spend annually is not spent locally, it's a huge opportunity for the local community, local offer, local town centre. You're not going to get all of it. Even if you've got 10%, it's $10 million more a year you would have spent in your town centre. So there is some small percentage gains, may not sound a lot, but in real dollars it's actually quite significant and a meaningful injection. Now that would flow on to more employment, more shops, more better quality, reinvestment, etc., etc. So just chip away. Very important. Now, I mean, I know for fact, I've done some work with some malls, that they all think Te Awamutu is a core part of their market, at the base and the CBD of Hamilton, etc. So again, it's that competitive nature of the market. They are out there marketing to try and attract all your consumers, or as many of your consumers as possible up that way. And if they're successful on an ongoing basis, Te Awamutu will be more and more become just a convenience centre, and less with that comparison offer. So it's an important understanding to have, so you can actually be in a position to fight back, because you know what to fight back against. Auckland is full thing, and that's not unusual. I've done a lot of market view spender flows for provincial areas around the country. Nelson, I think 5% of their spend goes to Auckland on an annualised basis, and again, that's more frequent flights. Tourism increasing, you've got more seats, they lower the cost of the seats, more people jump on the plane and go on shopping trips. But Auckland suffers. Auckland loses spend to Melbourne. It's just the next step up, big old syndrome. So nothing you can do about that. That's always going to occur. People just go out for weekends or events and things like that. But again, it just shows you you are competing with stores of Auckland. Tauranga, a little bit, and the balance of North Island, South Island. That's just your tourism flows, domestic tourism flows. But it does show you the level of potential that you have in the market. You're losing over $100 million a year from your local generated spend. So that could be tapped into and recaptured. The idea is how we're going to do that. What's your development? Sorry. Okay, so that was when you looked at the total market as a whole. So what we did, from looking at the total market, we broke down to some of the key sectors. And we looked at the net outflow of spend versus the inflow of spend. So how much was lost? So for example, the worst performing sector is the clothing, footwear and soft goods. So 75% of the generated spend in that area I showed you leaves the catchment. So $3 in every 4 that is generated locally in clothing isn't spent locally. Now that's a bit of a sad indictment, with all due respect, on the current provision and offer and environment of Te Awamutu. If $3 and $4 is chosen, people choosing not to spend in that particular sector, it says a lot about the local provision in that sector. So the local clothing, footwear. It's just clearly not meeting what the market wants or the market's expectations. So that's a big, I suppose, kick up the backside. Let's improve what we're doing for those stores locally, because you're missing out on so much of the market. You could be doing so much better than what you're currently doing. Offsetting that, you get 29% inflow. You do have a net inflow position for the supermarket sector, and that's largely as a result of the Pack and Save. I did some work pre-Pack and Save development, and you were hemorrhaging across every sector, badly, really badly. But this is a lot better picture than what it was, say, 10 years ago. But the challenge is, what are we going to do in the next 10 years to make it an even better picture again? So that's been an important. I mean, Pack and Save is probably the highest performing retailer and brand in the country, and biggest. It generates the most spend, has the widest trade catchment, which is pulling power where people come from, and the largest levels of spend of any retailer in the country. So having that brand in Te Awamutu is a big tip for the local economy, and we need to feed off that a bit more. It's a shame it's not in the middle of the town centre, but it's where it is. It is where it is. It's still here. So, but again, it just shows you the level of opportunity and the level of leakage. It's not just based on one sector. People are leaving across all sectors to do the shopping, primarily in Hamilton. So it's across the board we need to improve Te Awamutu's retail offer. In terms of employment, this tracks. I've split the ANZIC categories up into industrial, retail, commercial, and other. Other is medical, school teachers, hospital staff like that, often government institutions, local councils and things like that. Very important. So what we got there, we've got the other sectors are doing really well, and we've actually got really strong growth. The problem with that is it's not the productive base. So when you look at the industrial sector, you've actually overall you've grown about 33% employment over the 2000 to 2014 period. Now that's a good look at the cycle, because you had a boom period in the early 2000s up to 2000, 2007. Then the global financial crisis hit in late 2007, 2008 started to filter through. And then you had the fallout, the market correction from 08 to 010. And then from about 012 onwards, you start to see a recovery in the economy. And you have come up, Te Awamutu's come up, just like the rest of the country has as well. Over the net difference between 2000 and 2014, I think you're roughly 33% higher than in your employment base than what you were in 2000. New Zealand overall was 28%, so you punched just above your weight there. But the problem is when you, I haven't got it here, is that when you look at the manufacturing sector has gone back quite a bit, like in many smaller towns. But the manufacturing sector is critical, because that's your, and with the agriculture, that is your productive base. You need to have a productive growth in your productive base. You need to make more stuff to sell, basically. Otherwise, you become a service town. And we've seen a massive increase across New Zealand in the professional service sectors. Hello, me. Saying what's going on, but it actually doesn't help. In these smaller towns, a good example is Tauranga. They've had quite good population growth, but it's had massive growth in the service sectors. So the service sectors are the sectors that just serve the population. So it's very up and down based on what the population does. But you can imagine, as the population goes up and the services go up, the baby boomers, ageing bubble, they're going to start dropping off really quickly. So is your economy. The economic base for that region is going to drop off very quickly. So you become a satellite, a residential retirement village, basically, in a satellite town that is really a hindrance on population growth. But you need growth in your core productive base to be maintained over that period to help fund things later on down the track when the wheels start falling off and people start dying off. So when people start dying off, you need to have jobs so you can start replenishing the population. If you don't replenish the population, you're going to see some real downward spiral in areas. Nelson's another one where that's occurring as well. They've had good growth in the service sectors, and they've had really poor growth in the productive sectors. They think they're doing well, because they go, oh, look at all these new jobs you've created, blah, 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 blah. But in terms of the relativity, everyone's creating jobs. Is what proportion of the market you are versus in the relative sense. So New Zealand in the last, from 2000 to 2014, had just under 500,000 new jobs net. So these went up and down over that period. Your proportion of the total New Zealand market hasn't changed to a great degree. You've gone up a little bit, from 28% to 33%. You would expect that to go up, but you're not making significant gains. You're about 0.3 of New Zealand's employment base. and that hasn't changed. But you are doing all right that you've got job growth. And again, the halo effect, things are starting to disperse out. Hamilton's done quite well, and you get the spillover of that. So having industry, local industry here that helps service Hamilton industry is a very good, I suppose, economic play, really, because you can offer a better lifestyle here than what you can get in Hamilton, my humble opinion. But that's a pretty positive news story. The issue is, obviously, you're only just starting to get back to your pre-GFC levels, which is your 2008 levels from the recovery in a lot of the sectors. Retail, though, you can really start seeing that's lagging. That's not strong growth, which is representative of your offer locally over that period. Remembering there was that injection of the Pack and Save development over that time, which should have seen a bit of a spike up. But overall, we haven't seen much movement in the retail, which tends to suggest the retail offer relative to the wider market isn't doing as well, and it's falling behind relatively. So again, all things point to the retail sector not exactly fitting the bill at the moment and meeting the local market requirements, or doing as well as what it could or should be doing.
Does that retail include the farm service companies?
Sorry?
Farm service companies, farmhands, AD1.
No, it doesn't. It's the core retail sectors, which is the ones that we had up in the previous, supermarkets, clothing, they often fall outside of that because they service more than just the consumer. They often do farmers, which are business-to-business transactions. That's why we've also left hardware out of the retail sectors, because those things are now no longer fundamental town centre. They can't locate them, and they don't operate and function like it. And they often do trade to trade. Placemakers is a good example. They just have trade accounts with Fletcher builders, and the builders come and go. So it's not reflected. If you look at their total sales, the bulk of their sales with placemakers is only very small wedges actually from consumer walking the door thing. So no, it does exclude. So this looks at your level of employment retention within your local economy. I've just tried to draw some comparisons with sort of surrounding areas of life. Hamilton, what it says is Hamilton City has 111, so there's more jobs in Hamilton than there are people who are employed in the Hamilton market. So people are obviously travelling into the TA, Hamilton to work, So you'd expect that. Auckland's the same. In Auckland City, the Central Isthmus area has about, I think it's 145%. So it's 45% more jobs than what there are in the area. When you come down to the other end of the scale, Waipa's not doing so well. Yes, you'd expect to be less than 100 because you are a lot of people who are either living here and working in Hamilton. That's what it shows. So you're servicing a lot of their employment base at the moment. But in terms of, I've done work for Selwyn District, which is on the south side of Christchurch. Their level of servicing in Christchurch, Waimak on the north side of Christchurch, Waimakariri. Their proportions aren't that low. This is quite low relative to a satellite district on the edge of a main urban area. And it's Hamilton, it's not Auckland, it's not Christchurch, it's not, it's a big area, but it's not a fundamental, it's the main one of Waikato region, but it's not exactly a flagship for the country. So I would have thought there's a lot of opportunity to have more internalisation of your employment locally, which means you need more business growth locally. You need more jobs. And again, that's the fundamental thing. You need more to create more jobs locally. It's no use Hamilton turning up the volume of the vacuum cleaner and sucking up all the employment to their benefit. While there will always be leakage to Hamilton, we're just trying to minimise it as best we can. And it shows you have a lot of people, skilled people, living in the area who aren't working in the area. So to provide the opportunity, obviously, job growth will occur. So I'd like to see, it would have been interesting to see that further on, further see if it's trending up or trending back, but we certainly would want to see that percentage dropping because it just reflects missed opportunity for Te Awamutu itself. We need more employment here. Okay. So let's just have a look at some of the commercial employment forecasts. This is Office GFA forecast, floor space forecast, which is critical to the Charamoote Town Centre. Looking ahead, we don't need significant GFA, and that can comfortably be accommodated within the town centre. So, in terms of putting my perspective of looking at it from the hub, we don't need to start going rezoning, we don't need to land, we don't need to spread out the town centre more than what we've got. That can comfortably be consumed within the existing zone footprint of the Charamoote Town Centre. So the idea of it is, how do we improve that? If we improve our employment retention in Charamoote, that will go up, and then that's the challenge, is to see employment growth, job growth, business growth, economic growth, but in Charamoote, rather than seeing it being lost to some of these other areas. But we could be doing a lot better again. But that's important to show between your retail. There's a strong synergistic relationship between your retail and your employment office market. They work together. You don't want to start seeing the separated risks, you start losing your productivities and efficiencies. And that's one of the things that we've got. We've got, from the data that I've seen, Charamoote is losing productivity and economic efficiencies because it's a dispersal of activity, not only within Charamoote but outside altogether. When you do that, you lose your competitiveness as a business location, and you start seeing a slow downward spiral of the quality of the provision. No reinvestment goes in. Then the quality of the retail, because the employees are no longer in the town centre. The investment in the retail starts falling away. And that's what's happened probably over the last 20 to 30 years in Charamoote to get where it is now. It's a very, on a comparative sense, quite a tired, old-looking, feeling centre. That's not saying it's broken. I'm just saying it could be a lot better for today's modern market standards than what it currently presents itself as to the community. And quite frankly, it needs to be, or else we're going to be wallowing for the next few long. So the block of interest of the report, once we have a look at all that data, what does it mean for the yellow block? So this is something that the council's been working on, and to help put its hand up to say, how can we stimulate Charamoote? What can we do from a public sector perspective to help assist Charamoote and the mainstream of Charamoote, the Charamoote economy, without undermining it? So there's a lot of community facilities there, and the real concern, I suppose, or area of focus has been the red block, because that's the conduit, that's the connection between the main street and whatever is going to happen at in the hub development. So whatever happens in the yellow and the red, we don't want to undermine the main street. Okay? Now the main street, as I see it, is highlighted, well, the extent of it is highlighted there. As we move down, I forget the country that way, as we move down there, it starts bleeding away and falling away quite quickly in terms of quality and offer and continuity, etc. So while that's in the zone area, the main street, as I see it, is that little angle there, Alexander Road, and its connection is going to be more and more important to the hub, because that's where the community activity is going to be in the future. So just the last few slides to talk about some of the key outputs of the finding. So significant market opportunity exists and challenge. You're not going to get it as a right. You have to earn it and you have to work for it to improve your local retail provision. Your retail provision at the moment is not meeting the market's requirements. It's simple as that. You should and could be performing a heck of a lot better than you. The town centre should and could be performing a whole lot better than what it is. It's a missed opportunity. If your local market, your core market is turning its back and going to other centres, you're doing something fundamentally wrong. Research suggests that you don't need to be bigger. It's a quality issue, not a quantity issue. So if anyone says, oh, we haven't got this and we haven't got that, it's not about creating more GFA. It's about better use of the resource you've got, existing built form. You don't need to be big, you just need to be better and smarter than what you've got. Initial step, in terms of what do you do from here, is to actually understand why people are leaving. Where are they going to shop? What are the brands they're shopping at? What sectors are they shopping in? And why are they going there?